right. Welcome everybody to our Cooking for Wellness program brought to us by Central Ohio Urology Group tonight. So super excited to see all of you and um, to start this evening. Tonight we're talking about plant diversity and why we need it. And we've got some great vegetables we're going to be cooking up tonight. So I want to introduce Chef Jason, who will be doing our demonstration. We also have Lori Coleman, who is our registered and licensed dietitian with us tonight. So welcome everybody, and I will toss it over to you, Jason.
Welcome for another wonderful week of some wonderful, great recipes. In spite of us all being stay at home and sheltered in place during this COVID-19 wellness, by being able to cook more, I've been excited to see all across social media and things like that of families and couples and things being able to cook more at home in the kitchen. And so we are grateful that we're able to provide some recipes that you guys can try at home and that you can still maintain your journey of wellness with these really great healthy recipes. And not only are they healthy, but the good thing about them is that it demystifies the whole notion that healthy food has to not taste good. So these are not only healthy, but they're delicious and they have great flavors. And that's what we'll do, is build on those flavors so that you can have some really great things. Today, we're going to really discuss plant-based and getting as much of those type of nutrients from plants into your system. So the three recipes that we'll provide this evening and that we will demonstrate will be able to take you on that type of journey and see what that looks like. So I would say, like I tell my kids, at least try it. It may not be initially your cup of tea, but it's always worth trying something different, and you never know what you may actually enjoy. So I'll get started, and our first recipe is one I really enjoy because I love lentils. It's what we call a Mexican lentil soup. I remember having lentils probably the first time when I was in culinary school, and it was something new for me, but I fell in love with them. And the good thing about lentils is that they are very economical. So it's something that's not going to cost you an arm and a leg when you go to the store and grab. So they're cost efficient, and they're very versatile. So you can do a lot of different things with lentils. And one of the main ways is a soup. And then they're hearty, so they're very sufficient. They're going to be able to give you make you feel kind of really full, but knowing that you're feeling full and not with any bad nutrients. So that's the good thing about them. And our dietitian Lori could even tell us that lentils are a good source of protein.
Yeah, actually they are. And to speak to your point, Jason, about feeling full and satiety, probably what's most responsible for that is that there's 15.6 grams of fiber in 1 cup of lentils.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's a huge, huge number for that small amount of food. So that they're very nutrient dense in regards to fiber. Protein, there's 18 grams. So that's amazing too. And then there's 6.6 milligrams of iron. So all the way around, those three nutrients are powerhouses for lentils. The other thing that's worth mentioning is that there's 38 grams of calcium. So for a vegan, lentils can be very key in regards to being a good calcium, a very bioavailable calcium source, not to mention the folic acid and the magnesium. So they're pretty.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to even hear that all of those type of nutrients and all of those benefits for our bodies are just in one ingredient. We haven't even discussed all the other things that are going into this dish, just in lentils alone, that, like I said, are cost efficient. They make you feel full. They're full of protein, calcium, all these types of things are coming from. There's such a little ingredient, very small legume, but they're packed full of power and packed full of great effects for our body. So it's worth being able to try and to utilize for many different things. So even if you're going to a plant-based diet, or if you're trying out a vegan diet, you don't have to feel like you're missing out on anything. You know, a lot of times, and those who are not vegan or do not follow a plant-based diet, a lot of times they're like, well, I'm going to miss the meat, or I'm going to miss the protein. Well, in this one little ingredient, you're already getting a lot of things that you won't miss. So we're going to start this off just like any soup. I tell people, any type of soup that you're making, the base, it doesn't matter what type of soup it is. Most soups are going to start off with what I call your trinity, which is mirepoix, your mirepoix of carrots, onions, and celery. That's the base of most soups, carrots, onions, and celery. Now, we have added a little something else, which I like, is that we've added some red bell pepper into this. So the red bell pepper is going to add, another layer of flavor, and then it's going to also add some great color to this. But because it's a red bell pepper, Lori, it's going to also add what to us?
The red bell peppers we know are a great source of vitamin C, even more so than citrus. So that's kind of their claim to fame. I do want to acknowledge the question from Pat that she'd like to know the difference between the colors. So in regards to the colors of lentils, I should say, in regards to cooking, the brown and green varieties retain their shape well.
Yes.
So those tend to be less desirable for soup, like red and yellow tend to disintegrate. I'm sorry. So the brown and green would be better for soups, where the red and yellow tend to disintegrate. So I guess you want
kind of soften. They cook up and they kind of soften. You'll see a lot of those, like your red and yellows, in a lot of Indian dishes, what we call dal, D-A-A-L, because they do lose their shape as they cook, and they almost become what we call almost mushy. And so they're usually used in a lot of those dishes, those Indian dishes, in that aspect, whereas your green and your brown are a little bit what we call hardier, so they keep their shape more, and they are perfect for soups.
Okay. I also, I'm actually reading this here. Green lentils have a stronger earthy flavor than
yes.
Red. Okay. So that would be just a matter of preference. It looks like nutritionally they're very similar.
Yes, not a lot of change nutritionally. It's just really more so of how the application that you're going to be using them, and even flavor-wise. Like I said, the green, the brown, they're a little bit more earthier. The red and yellow are not but it's not a whole lot of change in that. This smells great already, and all I have in here is vegetables and some garlic. So I've added those vegetables in. We're going to get a nice saute on them. Get to your onions are translucent, so we're not sauteing these. We're just really sweating all our vegetables, softening up the carrots, and softening the vegetables as they go into the dish. Then we're going to add our seasonings. I always add our herbs and spices, especially if they're dry. I usually add them now because this is what we call they get to bloom. So the hot oil that we've been cooking our vegetables in, and the heat transfer is going to bloom, or it's going to increase the flavors of a lot of our seasonings and spices. So that's the one thing why we add those now. It's almost like cooking those herbs and spices to where they're able to release their natural flavors and heighten them. So we're going to add a little bit of cumin, because we did say this is Mexican. And that Cinco de Mayo was just a couple of days ago. So I know we probably should have had these. You wish you had these recipes before this week. But hey, well, let's celebrate it all week long. So we have some cumin. We have, of course, one of my favorite spices is smoked paprika. Really bring smokiness to this. If you don't have smoked paprika, you can definitely use regular. And then we have some oregano. So we have that in there, and I said we had our garlic. So now we will add some diced tomatoes, and this is just a canned small diced tomatoes. And I actually got some fire roasted because, you know, hey, why not? It's going to add a little character to your soup. Fire roasted tomatoes, you can definitely just find. And the key is that you want to also, if you're going to use a canned, especially tomato product, double check the label. It's always about double checking the label. See how much sodium is in that can. Any canned product, you always want to make sure you're double checking the sodium levels that are in whatever canned product that you're using. Compare them with a couple of either different brands and things like that. You want to go for low sodium or no sodium if you can find that in your grocery store. So I added in these tomatoes and the juices that were in the can, because that's going to help bring and tie all of these flavors together from that. You can use fresh if you like also, but we just use the can because they're already kind of a little cooked down, and they're just going to go well with the soup. So we got that in there, and we'll add our lentils now. And the key is when you're preparing any bean and even these lentils, is that you want to make sure that you've rinsed them in some cool water. Rinse them well. You want to double check them, make sure there's no grit or sand or any type of objects in those. So you kind of want to check them out, rinse them really well, because then they'll make sure they'll cook up really good. So I have my lentils in there. We have all the vegetables in there. It's a fiesta going on in the pot. And then we're going to add our broth. And so the good thing about this is once you've added everything in, you add your broth. It's really at that point, you could do this in a like a crock pot. If you don't want to watch it on the stove, you can do it in a crock pot. If you have an Instapot, you just have to cut your time, your cook time down probably by half. I have not used an Instapot personally, but I know that it cuts your cooking time down quite a bit. And if you have neither one of those, you can definitely do like we're doing here, is just cooking this right on the stove in a small pot and let it go. So we've got all our flavors in there. We've filled them well. We've got our lentils in there, and I'm just using some vegetable broth. Try it once again. Make sure you can, if you can, some as natural or organic broth as you can that has less sodium in it. And we're going to add that in there, and then we just let it go on its own and let it cook up. You want to you can put a lid on this and really just let it cook from there until it thickens up just a tad bit, and your lentils, they won't take too long because the lentils are small. So you want to check it after about 15-20 minutes and check it as long as your lentils are soft. You don't want them to get soggy. So once they've gotten soft and tender, and all your other flavors have kind of really melded in there, you'll have a really great soup, in which we'll top with some other toppings later. So we'll let that hang out just a tad. We'll let that hang out just a tad, and then we'll top it and become a really great festive Mexican-inspired type of soup.
I want to mention, when you were talking about the canned vegetables and the sodium, being conscious of the sodium, what I've learned is that if you rinse, the supposed reduction in the sodium content is 30%. So you can think about that. If you do rinse from the liquid that they're canned in, whatever the vegetable is, that's an estimate of the reduction.
So that's a great tip then. If you do get a product that does seem as if it has quite a bit of sodium, as Lori said, definitely rinse that off, because you want to be able to control the sodium that you are incorporating it into a dish, and you kind of don't want to be bullied into having a bunch of sodium by what's already been added to a particular dish. So this next one may take some people by surprise. It's what we call a Portobello Pot Roast. I know the word, now it sounds good if you were a meat eater, but if you're going plant-based, it's going to be as equally good even without you having the beef, because the flavor and the texture of the portobellos are a very meaty type of kind of hearty mushroom. And so those portobello mushrooms are going to still give you that textural type of reminiscence of beef. And then we're going to build some really nice flavors in here that are going to really add and allow this to all come together in that aspect. Because a lot of times, you know, and I feel for vegans, especially more and more, we're all having to learn how to make sure that we are able to accommodate them. And they do. They want more than, there's more than just salad for them or stuffed mushroom. There's a lot of different things and a lot of different opportunities for vegans and those who follow a plant-based diet to still have great, delicious food and not feel like they are confined to one or two type of items, even on a menu or so. And so this recipe, really still hearty, really great flavors and balance. And we'll talk about our portobello mushrooms. So here's our portobello mushroom caps. If you go to the store, you may see some already destemmed, but if you don't and you see them with the stems, the biggest thing about cleaning mushrooms, especially portobellos, is that you want to destem them. So I've taken, and all you have to do is just kind of rock that stem back and forth a little bit and then be able to pull it off. And then you want to make sure you take a damp paper towel or towel, not soaking wet, just kind of damp. And you want to lightly brush off your portobello mushroom of any type of dirt or debris. Now there is on the fence when it comes to the gills. So the gills are the kind of brown, they look like fish gills, the brown part of the mushroom. Depending on what the recipe that you're utilizing, you can keep that in there. It's not going to hurt you. They are edible. But a lot of times the gills, when they cook up in a dish, presentation wise, it kind of looks murky. So if you're, depending on the dish, I'm going to go ahead and remove them so that we have a nice clean. And to remove them, really simple. You're going to take a spoon, and all I'm doing is just lightly scraping, and I'm able to remove those gills, and we cleaned up our portobello mushroom. Like I said, it's not going to take anything away from it. Even if you keep them, it's not going to hurt you. It's really more about a presentation aesthetic and how you want your whatever you're using these for to present. So we'll do this.
I would leave them there if it were me, just because of the fungus. Buying your fungus, which is, good for the microbiome. And I don't know if everyone knows, portobellos are just mature white button mushrooms.
Oh.
I thought they were a different variety for a long time, but they're actually not.
They are not.
Why can't you eat stems?
I'm sorry?
What's that?
Jason, can you eat the stems? Because you said throw away the stems. Why throw away the stems?
Well, I mean, you could, but depending on the application of it, a lot of times you take the stems and you can cut them up and actually make like a broth, like a mushroom broth, and use them in that sense. I have not, because even on a button mushroom, you can leave the stem on and cut it up. Most of the time on a portobello, depending on what you're using, and they're really kind of woodsy and huge. So there's not normally a reason that you would leave and eat that stem on. Now, like I said, you could take the stem, make sure you at least cut off the very end of it, because that was the end that was usually in the ground, and you could chop it up and add some shallots and garlic or something like that, and it can help be a part of a stuffing. You can, like I mentioned before, you could take those stems and cross-utilize them and some cold water and some other vegetables, let them kind of simmer and become a broth, a mushroom broth. And I've done that, and that's been the base of if I made a mushroom bisque or a marsala sauce or anything like that.
Thank
So
you.
all I'm doing is I've cleaned them off, and now I'm just cutting them into kind of what I call thick steaks.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the nutritional side of these beautiful creatures? 1 cup is 42 calories. So that's really amazing when you think that you still get 3 grams of fiber. So being really low in carbohydrates and still providing fiber is a nice, unique combination. Not to mention the B vitamins, the zinc, and the selenium being powerful antioxidants. So in my opinion, all the way around, you are doing yourself a huge favor by using mushrooms. The AICR guidelines recommend mushrooms pretty regularly as well. They have, and that's due to their cancer fighting properties.
So they offer us quite a bit. And who would have known? And I love mushrooms. Like if you ask me, like onions and mushrooms just go in everything. So I love a good mushroom. And then to find out that it also helps in other ways, you can't beat that.
Okay.
So what I've done is I've taken our mushrooms, like I said, I cut them into pretty thick, if you guys can kind of see, pretty thick, what I call, because you don't want them to totally break down. You want them to have what we call a meatiness. If we're mimicking pot roast, we want them to have some kind of hardiness to them, so that they kind of give you that reminiscence of a pot roast or like a beef steak or something like that. So I've cut them pretty thick. And so what we're doing is we're just going to slowly saute them off here, get some brown on them in the pan. And as they kind of brown, they'll release a lot of, because that's the one thing about mushrooms is you have to be patient, because mushrooms, there's a lot of moisture in them. And so just when you think that they're cooked, they don't, because they have to release out the natural moisture that's in them. So especially when you're sauteing them, even if you're using button mushrooms or shiitakes and you slice them and you're trying to saute some mushrooms, it takes a little bit because you want to make sure you get all that moisture out, because that's actually when the browning will take place. So it does take a little time for them to brown because it's a chemical reaction. It's not going to brown, or the browning effect's not going to occur until the moisture has been drawn out of the particular vegetable, such as the mushroom, and then it's able to cause that reaction to happen, and you'll have the browning effect. So we're just going to allow those to brown. We have them on a medium heat, get some color on them, and then we will add in some almost like a braise, just like we would do if we were beef. We're going to braise the mushrooms. We'll add in some red wine if you don't want to use red wine, and we're just using some cooking wine. You can just use and deglaze and braise them in some broth. Once again, I would not use beef broth if you want to make this a plant-based recipe. So you would use some vegetable broth in that sense to deglaze and to braise your pot roast. So we'll flip these over. They're getting brown.
Jason, can I interrupt you a second? We have
Yes.
a question from Pat. And the question is, could you sub cremini if no portobellos are available?
You could, but the only reason why I would say that it would change the whole thing, we could not call this a pot roast because creminis are small. And then, so the reason that we're using portobellos, especially portobello caps in this aspect, is that it's mimicking large pieces of pot roast. And so almost like a full hearty dish. And so that's the reason why we're using these substantially. If you were to, use some creminis, then it would really change the dish, and it would almost be, I would say, more of a topping per se, because you would have those small mushrooms utilized. But if there are none available, definitely you would still be able to use it. Like I said, I don't think the full nature of what you're going for here in this dish would come to life in the small mushrooms.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm adding my deglaze.
Which I noticed the recipe says white or red, and I just thought red made so much more sense.
Yes, because even with like a lot of beef recipes, you would go for more of what we call a red, because it just really, those notes in a red wine just really help to bring out a lot of this. And even though this is not beef, and we're taking on that type of profile, it really just pulls out a really lot of nice notes, because this is a hearty kind of woodsy type of thing. A red wine would really pair well with that. So we've deglazed in a sense. So we're going to add some garlic, and we're just letting that simmer just a tad bit to cook through. It's going to finish cooking through. If you were to put this in the oven, we're going to do it all in the pan, but you can finish. And I know the recipe says, talks about, for an hour or so. Once again, if you have a crock pot, you can do the same thing, or you could do it in this pan, because once it cooks and softens, it won't take too long for these mushrooms. You don't want the mushrooms to end up being kind of a mush, because they won't take that long, even cut this thick, for them to thoroughly cook through. So I'm going to remove them from the pan. They've sauteed really nicely. And I still have that red wine in there. And what you would want to do is you want to kind of keep these in the pan until that red wine, or if you're using the vegetable broth, kind of evaporates and just a tad. And once it evaporates and condenses, then we're going to add our onions. We have some sliced onions, almost as if we're caramelized. We're going to start the caramelizing process. Oops, that's what happens when I put my carrots and onions in the same container. So I have these onions. We'll have those nice and down this, and we'll start a caramelization. And once again, it's one of those things that takes a little patience when you're caramelizing, because you're not sauteing them. When you're caramelizing onions, it's basically at a lower heat, so that you can get the natural sugars in those onions to release, the moisture and the natural sugars to release. And that's where caramelization. You cannot have caramelization without there being sugar present. We're not adding any sugar to it. The natural sugars of the onions is going to release, giving us that caramelization effect. Because if you had your heat up, say at a medium, you're going to saute them, and so you're going to get that browning effect from that sense. But if we want to release the natural sugars from that to get caramelized onions, then that's where we just do it lower, what we call low and slow. And you just let it soak up all the rest of that. We use the red wine. You let the natural sugars release in that. You'll start seeing them brown slowly but surely. You kind of keep stirring them around until you get a really nice rich color on that. Like I said, this is introducing natural sugar into the dish. That's going to bring a lot of balance to the earthiness from the acidity from the red wine, so forth and so on. So we'll add that in. We'll add a little bit of garlic. And we're building flavors here. Just like if you were making a regular pot roast, we're building up those really nice flavors all in the same sense. Once our onions have kind of caramelized, our garlic has become fragrant, and you don't want to add the garlic in. You want those onions to come to a good caramelization before you add the garlic in, because we all know that burnt garlic is bitter. You want to keep that in mind. Burnt garlic is bitter.
Hey, Jason, will you lift the pan up just so we can see a little bit of what you're doing? Thank you. Cool.
So as those cook down a little bit, what I'm going to do now is, now I have, you can call it cheating, but to cut the time down in this, because the recipe does initially call for you to have this for a long time, but you can't wait. You're excited about getting this dish and trying it out. So what I've done is I've cut my carrots up, but I've kind of par cook them, or you can throw them in the microwave with a little water to soften them. So then it won't take so long in the pan. So I'll soften these up. So they're going to build the flavor, but they're not going to take forever for them to cook. So I'm adding my carrots in. We're going to add some of we got some basil, so some of our flavor. And you can add whatever type of other seasonings that you want in this. Some fresh thyme, rosemary, really nice earthiness, all those really great flavors that'll go with this. Add our carrots in there. And then I'm going to add some flour. And this is some gluten-free flour. So if you have sensitivities, gluten sensitivities, definitely there are wonderful products out here that are for gluten-free sensitivities. Now I want you to be able to see this. If you notice in the bottom of the pan, there's a little browning that has occurred in the bottom of the pan. That came from the onions, that came from cooking the carrots cooking up a little bit. So what that did is that brown is flavor. It's a French word called fond. So that's flavor that we're going to really get off. So I'm going to add the flour in there to coat all these vegetables, because all we're going to do is add some broth that's going to lift all that flavor off of there. I'm sorry, I'm going to add a little bit of the red wine I had left. That's going to deglaze, because the acidity in the red wine is going to deglaze and lift all that great flavor up. And then I've added the flour in. So once we add our broth, then it's going to automatically start to thicken. And it's going to create almost like a gravy. So now we got all that flavor off of the bottom of the pan. It smells wonderful. And then we're going to add.
Does it smell like meat? Does it smell like pot roast?
I won't say it smells like pot roast just yet. It smells like the beginnings of pot roast with all those, the wine, the onions, the carrots, and all that. And I've got some red potatoes. And I use red potatoes. I just quartered those because they hold up a little bit better in something that's going to be in liquid. So I've par cooked those too, so that it doesn't take long in the dish. Now we will add our broth. And what's going to happen, you add your broth and a little bit of, I know it says Worcestershire, but if we're keeping this vegan, we'll add a little bit of Tamari. And so Tamari is basically a gluten-free soy sauce per se. Because if you didn't know, soy sauce contains gluten. But if you go in the Asian aisle of the grocery store, you'll see something called Tamari. And that actually has no gluten in it, so that you can be able to still enjoy Asian dishes or dishes like this, where it's going to be able to give you some good richness to it. And it's going to add to a little bit of the color, since we don't have like a beef broth or beef base in this. So we'll add that in there. And it's going to add sodium to it. So because we haven't added any other salt into this.
Which tamari is a little less salty than soy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
So that, once again, it gives you the availability to control your sodium. So now we've added the flour in there, we've added this broth. Really, at this point, you just let this kind of hang and simmer. And as it simmers, almost like on me, it will start to thicken up. We'll add in a little bit of our sprig of rosemary. We'll add in, got some fresh thyme. And then everyone in the pool, as it goes in, sorry guys, mic dropped. So as that goes in, that's going to infuse into this, and it's going to give it really great flavor. So you got some good heartiness going on here with those fresh herbs. And the thing is that we can put those in now, because thyme, rosemary, they're a little bit more heartier, so they can stand up. You know, if you have more delicate herbs like basil, you usually add those at the end of a dish because they're delicate. and they don't handle well as they cook. These do. They release a lot of great flavors. So now we will add back in our beef pot roast, portobello pot roast. And we'll let this just simmer and hang out. And so we're going to allow our portobello mushrooms to get all this flavor. We're going to let our potatoes finish cooking, and we'll let all these flavors blend well. We'll let the gravy thicken up, and then you'll have just like a pot roast. Let that hang for just a tad, and we'll see. If you can't see, this is kind of what's in my pot.
Looks great.
Jason, Irene has a question about the wine. If you used a sweet or a dry red wine?
Well, most red wines are dry, are sweet. Well, not sweet, but they are. A dry wine is usually your white wines. So using a red wine would not be. And like I said, I'm just using some regular cooking red wine. If you don't have any, of course, you can use one that you may have at your house already of red wine. I wouldn't use a specifically sweet wine because you gotta realize what's going into the dish here, and that may overpower. So you don't want a red wine that's going to overpower the rest of the dish and the flavors of the dish.
I've always heard not to use wine in your cooking that you wouldn't drink. So it has to be good enough to have a glass of it to put it in your dish.
Yes. All right, so that's thickening as I stirred it around. It's thickening, it's coming good, and it's now starting to smell like pot roast.
Okay, so Pat did tell us that she said most reds are dry, like a Cabernet, Malbec, or Merlot. So those would not be as sweet. Is that what you're saying, Pat? I'm actually.
I'm a wine professional, so yes.
She said a wine professional.
You need a wine professional for sure. So for everyone's information, Cabernet, Malbec, or Merlot.
Yes.
Like
okay.
a good Merlot would be good.
Thank you very much for clearing that up.
All right. So like this is already starting to thicken. So it's giving us that gravy sense. And like I said, the fresh rosemary and thyme, I'm telling you, if you don't have any, you can definitely add dry. But the way those flavors are coming out, and I can smell those flavors, the aroma of the fresh rosemary is just really, really, really great. Let that hang out just a little bit so it thickens and everything kind of softens up. And we'll have pot roast. Like I said, I wish you guys can see.
That looks great.
Everybody see that? And so it doesn't take that long. Meanwhile, we'll check on our lentils over here that are smelling wonderful, smells like Mexico. And we'll see if they start to have softened up and we can turn them down.
So you actually have green lentils in the soup, Jason?
I actually have green lentils.
Okay, so they will hold their shape. They probably won't puree down.
Not at all.
Okay, great.
They can go just a little bit longer, but the flavor is great. So they're a little still, like I said, you want them to go until they're tender. So they can go a little bit longer because they still have a little bit of bite to them. You want them to their, what we call not mushy, but to their tender, al dente, to the bite. That's what al dente means, to the tooth or to the bite. So where it's not hard, but it's not totally soft. So we'll let those kind of hang out just a little bit longer. and we'll move on. How many enjoyed or had some great tacos for Taco Tuesday?
I did.
You know, oddly enough, I didn't.
You didn't.
You know, I wanted some. I could have made a whole spread myself. I just didn't feel like it. And so I was toying with, if I don't feel like it, what am I going to eat? Or what restaurant? And I live near Reynoldsburg area, Reynoldsburg, Pickerington, and there's a lot of great Mexican restaurants over in that neighborhood, but I wasn't familiar with a lot of them. And I was like, I don't want to try, especially during this time of takeout and things like that. I was like, man, I want to be able to get the full essence of these tacos. And because I've never been in these restaurants and enjoyed them and seen their menus, I didn't want to take the chance of just randomly ordering something off the menu and having to go pick it up and didn't know if I was going to like it or not. Because I don't know about you, but when I go to a restaurant, before I order, I kind of look over at other people's table, see what they're eating and ordering, and see what the food looks like. And that gives me a sense of, I know, I'm the only one, right? No, I can't be the only one.
You are not the only one. I check it out for sure.
I check out and see what everybody else is. So I can see what certain dishes look like. Then I look at the menu and like, you know what? I'm going to order that because that person at that table, they have that and it looks great. So.
Well, just like you said, you eat with your eyes before you actually eat. So that seems reasonable to me.
So I didn't end up having tacos and stuff for Tuesday. So I guess this is my Cinco de Mayo today. This is a plant-based, and we're going to use, I know if you guys have looked at the recipes, you're all probably wondering what in the world. Walnut, I'm telling you, it's going to be different, but it's going to be really great. And the nuts that we're using in this, we're making a cashew sour cream, and we're using walnuts as our meat filling in this. So you have two different nuts that are in this recipe that are going to probably blow our nutritions out of the water.
Yeah, well, walnuts, they do require a little mentioning. Plant-based omega-3s, they're kind of unique in that way. So if you're keeping with your plant-based diet, and especially if you're vegan, this is a great source for omega-3s, plus vitamin E, not to mention other healthy fats, monounsaturates, and lots of fiber and protein. So I think that this would be something that if it strikes your fancy and you decide that this sounds good, this would be a very reasonable high frequency recipe to bring in.
Most definitely.
Tacos.
Taco Tuesday on a Thursday.
Right.
So I'm going to start with the sour cream, and which is the base of it's going to be cashews. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we did a vegan cheese, and we used cashews at that time. So we're going to use these cashews. Now, the key is that, and I didn't mention this when we did the cheese, even though I don't know if anybody tried it, came out good, but a way to keep a nice smooth texture is what we call to blanch these, or to soak our cashews either overnight or at least a couple of hours before you're going to use them. That helps to soften them. And the other key is make sure when you're making, whether it's a vegan cheese, whether it's the sour cream, make sure your cashews are raw, unsalted cashews. You don't want to make this with roasted, salted. So make sure you look at your package of cashews that they say raw, unsalted cashews. And so I've soaked these for a couple of hours. So they're actually pretty soft and tender. So that's going to lend to a really nice sauce or sour cream in this aspect. So we're going to add our cashews to the blender. We have a nice blender here. And then we're going to add a little bit of apple cider vinegar.
Which, can I take a second while you're adding those ingredients to talk about apple cider vinegar?
Yes.
It's one of my most favorite ingredients ever.
Really?
It is. It is so versatile, number one, but number two, it's powerful in its antimicrobial and antioxidant effects. Like it literally has the ability to kill pathogens. So when you think about immune support, or if you're battling anything infection wise, getting some apple cider vinegar incorporated into your diet's a good idea. The apple cider vinegar is 5 to 6% acetic acid. So how apple cider vinegar is made, the manufacturer will take apples and expose them to yeast, which will ferment the sugars. Then that turns to alcohol, and then they'll add additional bacteria to further ferment, and that's how the acetic acid is produced. So it's almost like medicine in a jar. We've got the 5 to 6% acetic acid, which if they do not filter that, so if you buy an unfiltered apple cider vinegar, you're going to have something called the mother included in the vinegar. So that makes it kind of murky, like you'll know what that looks like in the unfiltered version. It'll be that murky appearance, but that really increases the amount of friendly bacteria. So when you think about a healthy microbiome, so those bugs in your gut, including apple cider vinegar regularly kind of gives the leg up for the good guys. So I love that that's part of this dressing. I think wherever we've used vinegar in our recipes, if you want to go back to apple cider, they all have good properties to them, but the apple cider vinegar has a little bit of a additional set of good things. So
I had a tablespoon of vinegar, apple cider vinegar, to my orange juice every day.
That's a great idea.
That's a good way to put it in, get it in.
It doesn't change the taste of the orange juice. I have a whole glass. I just add a tablespoon of the apple cider vinegar to it each day.
That's a great suggestion. I'm sure your kidneys love that. That helps alkalize.
Yes.
Which
I have another question. You keep talking about the recipes. I got recipes from the past on your website, but I don't have today's recipes. Where do we find those? I'm not in person, so I can't have them on my fingers. Like when I went to your class, I got the recipes.
They are on the cancer support website.
Yes, but those are the past. Those are for April. There's none for May.
Angie, they can't hear you for some reason.
How do I get today's recipes? I want the exact measurements of everything you put in.
Dawn, they're on the website. We went over this at the beginning of class. If you go to the home page and look at today's schedule.
Yes, I did. I was on there and I couldn't find them.
Look under Thursday, and then they're there.
Okay.
They're there.
So it's got click on recipes, videos on demand. So I have to click on Thursday.
Go
and
up.
then it will say recipes. Okay, I see it in red print.
Yeah.
He's on the walnut meat tacos now.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So we've added our apple cider vinegar. We added lime juice to this because this is lime sour cream. If you don't like lime, that's just an extra. You don't have to add. We just flavored our sour cream. You don't have to add that, but as long as you have the soaked cashews, you have the apple cider vinegar, because that's going to bring a little acidity to this, just like your sour cream. And then and what I did is the water that I soaked my cashews in, I just poured that off, and that's what we're going to add into this to make it nice and smooth. And so I only added I start off with a little bit, and we'll kind of slowly add more to get the texture that we need or that we desire with this. So you just kind of add probably about half the amount that you see there, and then you continue to add more you add more, and as it gets to the nice, smooth, creamy texture that you're looking for. So we will start. We'll puree this. And oh, see, and if you were wondering, you're like, how's it going to be sour cream? It's like, it's not white. Actually, as it purees,
It turns white.
it turns white. So as I was doing this, it's still a little chunky, so I'm adding a little bit more of the water. I'm just adding a little bit at a time. There we go, lift off.
Can I ask another question? Most of your recipes say cloves of garlic. How many tablespoons? Is it 1 tablespoon of the minced garlic in the jar and olive oil for 1 clove of garlic?
I would say about a half a tablespoon, one
A
clove
half?
of garlic, 1 clove of garlic, and it also depends on how large your garlic is. And it depends also on if you like garlic or not. Garlic
Okay.
is one of those things that you can have a measurement for, but if you're a lover of garlic, then the measurement is really may not be enough for you.
Okay.
So I would say do it to your own taste and your own liking.
Well, I started to put garlic in a lot of things. You can put it in almost every dish you make.
Yeah, you can. It's a great addition. I did look it up. It's a half teaspoon minced garlic from a jar equals 1 fresh clove. Is that what
Only
you said?
half of a teaspoon?
Yeah, it says half teaspoon minced garlic from a jar
Wow.
equals 1 fresh garlic clove.
Well, I put in a tablespoon for all the
To
rest.
me, that's not enough garlic. But I like garlic. Garlic, it always adds a really great flavor to whatever. But then it also is not just a good flavor. It adds great nutrition to it. So it's not for nothing. I'll say that.
Right.
We're almost there. Yes. Now it's at the consistency. Yes, it's at the consistency that I want. I'm going to add just a tad bit more. It's not too thick. It's not too depending on if you like Chipotle sour cream or regular sour cream. All right, so we have a nice, smooth, plant-based sour cream. And like I said, the key is you get this to the texture that you are looking for, but ultimately, if you're going to say it's sour cream, you want it to be really nice and smooth. And let me show you. First of all, if you can see, it's white.
It's white. Yeah.
So it's really nice and smooth and thick.
Mm-hmm.
So there's our sour cream. So we have our sour cream, because you can't have tacos without sour cream. I'm sorry. Now we will make our meat, per se, of the taco. And we have some shelled walnuts. And we're just going to get your food processor. We're going to take our shelled walnuts. And even though with the cashews we soak them, the reason we're not going to soak these because we don't want these to, we're going to put these in the food processor and just kind of pulse them, because we don't want them to kind of get down. We want them to resemble what we like ground meat. So we want a little texture on these. So you would not, of course, soak these. The only reason we soaked those was because we wanted them to soften up and we wanted a nice smooth texture from them. So we have our walnuts, and we're just going to kind of pulse them lightly. Like I said, you don't want this to get down to like till it's milled, you want some texture, you want some nice chunks in it as if it was ground meat texture. So we'll just pulse them just a tad. There we go. Wait a minute. It'd help if I plugged it in. All right, and then we'll add a bunch of different nice flavors and seasonings that will really give this what we want and give it that taco meat type of essence. Let's see here. The plug is not working. There we go. Let's see. Hopefully that works. Oh, that did not work. Sorry, technical difficulties here.
You need help from one of us, Jason?
Got it. The plug just wasn't working. It wasn't going all the way in the plug.
Okay.
There we go. Just going to lightly pulse. I'm being careful to not, I don't want to mince it all the way down.
Pat gave us a great tip here for those of you who aren't looking at the chats, but it said get a squeeze bottle from the dollar store and put your cashew cream in it to serve and store.
That would be a great idea. And the thing is, you could go ahead and make it, put it in that bottle and put it in the fridge, and so it'd be nice and ready. All right. So we've kind of pulsed this down. Like I said, we didn't want to pulse it too much, so it's still got some texture to it. And we're going to basically put this in the pan with our seasonings. We're going to add our other seasonings to this to give us that, what we call meat. So we'll add some granulated garlic. We're not using fresh garlic because this is not necessarily cooked. We have some chili powder. Cumin, of course, because you can't have anything that is Mexican without some really great cumin. And then we will add some of that tamari. And so the tamari is going to kind of really bring this together. It's going to give it that kind of meat. And like I said, it's going to add a little bit of sodium to this and kind of bring it all together. And then if you have any extra lime juice from your cream, I'd add just a tad bit of that lime juice in there. And then I'm going to mix this just lightly again to incorporate all the seasonings and that tamari. Yes. And this really does now look like some ground meat.
Back to the cashew cream, Jason. We have oh, that looks great.
Yeah.
So that looks like your ground meat. And now it's time to build some tacos. Yes, the question about the
cashew sauce, like how long could you store that for? How long could you put it in the fridge for?
It really would only last probably a day, about a day or two. So if you were to make this ahead of time, I'd only make it a day. And then if you were saving some, that I would only save it for at least up to 2 days.
Okay.
So we're going to build our tacos.
Jason, in regards to storing the lime cashew sour cream, do you think it's like a consistency issue, like probably a little bit of separation?
It will separate, and that's the reason why. It's not as if it will go bad. It's just really the consistency then will break down.
Yeah.
Because you have that the acid, the apple cider vinegar acid, and so that's going to continue to break that down.
So yeah, Angie, I was wondering, I mean, safety wise, you could probably do 3 to 4 days, but like quality wise, it's probably not going to be what you're expecting after the first day, honestly.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, it's not like it's going to go bad. So you could keep it for a couple of days, but for textural consistency, that's the only reason why I say that. All right.
Could you put it back in the processor and reprocess it?
Well, then you're only going to make it thinner. You're only going to thin it out. Like I said, because the acidity in it's going to continue to break things down. So it's only going to, I guess, become more what we call liquidy. So let's see here. Let's build some tacos. So we got our meat. I promise you, it looks, if I wasn't doing this myself, then I would think I was having a meat taco. And we're gonna build Taco Thursday. It's a new hashtag. All right, we got our tacos, and then we just have some different toppings. So, you know, maybe you got some regular onions, some white onions or purple onions, or what I call red onions. So we got some onions in there, whatever you would top your tacos with. And these are all vegetables. So we have some onions. We got some shredded carrots that look like cheese. Some shredded carrots. This is our shredded cheese. Then we got some red cabbage.
So on my Taco Tuesday night, I broiled tilapia. I seasoned it and broiled it, and that worked beautifully. And then for a super shortcut, I took a Southwest bagged salad kit.
Mm-hmm.
So it had pepitas and tortilla strips and some cabbage along with the greens, and a creamy cilantro dressing, avocado dressing, and that was it. So I had the bagged salad kit and the grilled or the roasted tilapia, and that was our tacos.
And that sounds great.
Yeah, simple, very, very simple, but it worked out pretty well.
I'm gonna take some cilantro, just roughly chop it up. Some cilantro. Beep, 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 beep. You know, you got to make the sound effects. Beep, 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 beep. And
Gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
no one will ever know that this is literally all plant-based.
You're right.
Beautiful, Jason.
Yeah,
Yes.
the presentation is great.
And the sour cream looks like sour cream. So, but all made up, all plant-based, all nutritionally valuable to you. So you don't have to feel guilty. You've noticed this plate has about 4 of those tacos on there. So you don't have to feel totally guilty about. I'm going to use the rest of the cilantro. I'm going to add into our lentils. And I'll show you guys how our lentils came out.
So could the black beans be added to the lentil soup?
You can add black beans to that. Then you just have to be careful because also
What'd you say?
black beans may, depending on, just depending on making sure, because your lentils are smaller, so they'll cook up faster than your black beans. That's the only thing, is that the difference in the cooking time. Yum. So we got our lentil soup, stew. If I was Rachel Ray, stoop. Let's show you.
See, I would probably put the sour cream on that too. I would,
And you know, because it is
Just thinking
Mexican,
that same thing.
it's Mexican flavored. You can
Mhm.
definitely take some of your cashew sour cream and add that to your soup, because this does have Mexican flavors. So, hey, why not? Cross utilization of ingredients. And so this smells wonderful.
Is
Matter of fact, I think
cumin?
well, we got an avocado, so we have a healthy fat. So we'll
Is
add,
cumin the same ingredient that is in taco seasoning?
yes, and a lot of taco seasoning. But it's easier to make your own anyway, because like I said, a lot of those
Make your own what? Cumin?
taco seasoning.
And
Instead of
what's in taco seasoning?
basically what we use today. So a little bit of cumin,
Cumin.
chili powder, garlic, garlic powder, some paprika. I'm gonna take some avocado.
Cumin, chili powder, garlic powder, and paprika is in taco seasoning.
And if you have any onion powder.
And onion powder.
As a matter of fact, now Lori, since you and Angie mention it, we're gonna put a dollop of our sour cream
beautiful.
right on top.
Cilantro, I knew that was coming next.
And then a little bit of cilantro.
Perfect.
Mhm.
You guys can see.
So do you need my address to deliver that?
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Yes, that's beautiful.
Yeah, looks
Beautiful.
nice.
Now the moment you've all been waiting for, Portobello Pot Roast. First of all, I want you to just look at this in the pan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like you would not know otherwise. Let's see. Let's get our beef. Let's get some of the other stuff first, and then we'll get all the beef heartiness out. So these nice potatoes got a nice gravy, because everything's good with gravy, but hey, this was all used with plant-based items. Let's get a spoon. Scoop this out. Let's see here. So I guess people will have to put addresses in the comments, and have to just go around and deliver samples. This smells great. Let me get some of my meat. Beautiful.
The picture that is on the actual recipe on the website that everyone can see is actually what inspired me to include the recipe, because it looks so good. Just visually, it's pretty nice.
And then, because I'm all about
Wow.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
So nice, Jason.
Yes. Mhm.
Now, it looks good, but what does it taste like? This is what I call the old taste and see moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, got some carrots. We got the nice, wonderful gravy. Some caramelized onions. Oh, wow. I'm telling you, has all the flavors of a pot roast. I mean, it's nice and rich. Has that really great richness to it. like I said, the gravy is real seasoned, and all we did was put, just from the thyme, from the rosemary, all of that. You have these nice potatoes. They're soft, but they're not too soft. This is great, and the portobello mushroom is nice and hearty and meaty. I don't know what you're missing. Well, you guys are missing it. So yeah, really good. And if you notice in all these recipes, you barely put any salt into it, but the flavors come out amazing. We added the tamari, which is actually low sodium. That was our salt. So our lentil soup, like I said, I love lentils. So
Your lentil soup looks thick. Did you add 8 cups of vegetable broth?
I actually did half the recipe because it's only me.
Okay. You did half the recipe. Okay.
Wow. And let me tell you, this cashew sour cream, you couldn't have paid me to tell me that this not sour cream.
That's awesome. For real?
I'm telling you, you would not have paid me to tell me that that's not real sour cream.
That's awesome.
It's an easy recipe, so I encourage each one of you to try the sour cream. If nothing else, trick your kids or your grandkids. Try it on them first if you need to. They will not know that it is not real sour cream.
Good to know.
That's really good. Wow. Tacos. I mean, you can't beat that.
No, it's beautiful.
Wow.
You had 3 winners tonight, huh?
I don't even know what to say. I have no words for this. I'm a meat eater. But I'm
So
telling
you didn't know this was going to taste that good before you made it?
No, I knew, but not to this extent. Now, I will say the walnut parts of it, I had not tried. I've had cashew sour cream, though. But this all together like this, I'm telling you, awesome.
Great. 3 winners tonight.
We believe you when you go in for a second bite.
Yes. And if you want, you take your little lemon wedge, just like your tacos, squeeze that over your tacos, have yourself a winner. So 3 great plant-based recipes, easy, really great ingredients that you can find at your local produce, in your produce section in your store. It's worth trying out. You can't go wrong with a plant-based, even if you're not going vegan, but to incorporate more plant-based foods and recipes into your repertoire can't do anything but help you than harm you. So I would give these a try. Try them out while you're home, while you're practicing social distancing and shelter in place, and just and see. It's not going to hurt. Let us know if you try any of these recipes out and how they come out for you, and how you've enjoyed them. If you've made them for anyone else in your home and what their take was, especially these type of recipes. And we'd be glad to know how they turn out for you.
I wanted to let you know that we've had the sweet potatoes and the chickpeas and the spinach dish every week since I was in your class.
Every week?
Every single week. It's fabulous. And my grandson's 19. He liked it too.
Well, you know what? When you can get a teenager to enjoy it, then it was good.
Yes. Yes.
That's
And
great.
we like to roast the sweet potatoes. We roast the sweet potatoes in the oven. It's fabulous.
Yes, I love sweet potatoes roasted in the oven.
Well, we cubed them all, like you said. We cubed them and put them in on the cookie sheet. It was fabulous.
Well, we're glad that you enjoyed and got to try
Yes.
that out.
I have another question. How much of the dried red pepper flakes would equal 1 pepper? Because I've only got 1 pepper left for my next dish with my sweet potatoes and spinach. How much would you put into this lentil soup if you needed to put some dried pepper? You know, I've got the red pepper dried in a jar,
You
but it
mean
goes a long ways.
now? When you say red, are you talking about red pepper flakes?
Yes.
Okay, so that is well, it wouldn't be comparable as far as the red bell pepper. If you don't have
Okay.
a red bell pepper, if you have a green bell pepper or yellow bell pepper,
I've only got 1 left. So,
well,
but this red pepper flakes goes a long ways because I sprinkled a lot in one time and it was really hot and spicy.
right, and so that's not the same as having a bell pepper. Red pepper,
Right.
red pepper flakes are going to add a lot of heat to
Yes.
the dish, whereas a bell pepper actually doesn't add any heat. It actually adds a little sweetness to the dish, as a
Okay.
bell pepper would.
Okay.
So if you don't have a bell pepper, then you can just omit that from the recipe. If I should say, if you want to save your red pepper for something else, but you're not getting a equal substitution is not red pepper flakes.
But that would help with the Mexican lentil dish to add the red pepper flakes.
I mean, you could add some red pepper if you want to increase the
heat.
spiciness
Yes.
of the dish. And you're right, a little goes a long way.
Yes. But we
but
use a
using it
whole
as
pepper
the
in your sweet potato dish with the chickpeas. There's a whole pepper used in that recipe.
Right.
Yes.
So that's because it's a bell pepper.
Yes.
As I'm saying, a bell pepper and pepper flakes are not the same.
Right.
They don't do the same thing in a dish, period.
Okay.
One is a spice. One is an actual vegetable
Yes.
that's going to, so it's not comparable or interchangeable.
Okay.
Do you have any jalapenos?
No, I don't.
Um,
No. I'm going to a produce market tomorrow, so maybe I'll get some tomorrow. Sometimes they give me peppers there.
Okay.
So maybe I'll get, but all these recipes help us use whatever they're going to give us. We're going to substitute and make them work.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's really it. Just, you make it work the best you can. If you don't have, the one thing about a recipe, and I say this all the time, a recipe just kind of lays a foundation.
Right.
You learn the recipe or you learn the way to manage that recipe, but you can make it your own and twist and turn that recipe after you've at least gotten down the foundation of it. Once you've understood how the process of it, then from there, you can substitute, you can omit or whatever to your own liking. But I always say, at least start with the core of the recipe so that you at least understand the fundamentals of that recipe.
Yes. Thank
you. When you don't have a particular ingredient, you don't have to be like, oh my gosh, I can't do this recipe because I don't have that ingredient. Well, no, that you could substitute and still get it because you've understood the fundamentals and process of that recipe.
Yes.
Dawn, I would consider maybe a zucchini. Do you have zucchini?
I did, but I used those up too. I made zucchini muffins.
Oh.
And I substituted oatmeal for the flour, but I looked it up. I have to soak the oatmeal in milk or eggs for 15 minutes. And that makes, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Well, hopefully in your produce delivery tomorrow, you'll get something that works in place of
I've got the lentils. That's why I needed the recipe. I've got this big bag, 2-pound bag of lentils. It's going to go quite a ways. I can make lentil soup once a week now.
Yay.
Thank you, everyone. That was great.
Yes.
Appreciate your hard work.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments or updates?
We just want to again thank Central Ohio Urology for bringing this cooking class tonight, and it's been a fun evening with you guys.
Thank you.